John and Ed, they're on patrol, chasing shadows, heart and soul. Cryptid hunter UFO, down this rabbit hole they go. In the woods and on the street, whispers follow their heartbeat. Alien eyes, giant's feet, all got shadows they all meet. Down the rabbit hole they dive, midnight secrets start to thrive. Mysteries keep them alive. In the dark, does truth survive? Haunted houses, midnight calls, endless echoes in the halls. Ghostly murmurs, secret falls, every clue, they chase them all. Whispers follow their heartbeat. Alien eyes, giant's feet, all got shadows they all meet. Down the rabbit hole they dive, midnight secrets start to thrive. Mysteries keep them alive. In the dark, does truth survive? Haunting walls, they've got the key. Hidden fears, they set them free. Cryptid hunter, you and me, down this rabbit hole, let's see. Unseen worlds, they've got the key. Hidden fears, they set them free. Cryptid hunter, you and me, down this rabbit hole, let's see.
In the summer of 2007, Professor Elena Vargas disappeared without trace from her laboratory at the Central American Agricultural Research Institute. Her office was found in perfect order. No signs of struggle, no farewell note. The only peculiarity was a single flash drive labelled Project X. It was left conspicuously on her otherwise empty desk. The authorities closed the case after 3 months, concluding that Vargas had simply abandoned her position. But those who knew her and her work understood that something far more significant had occurred. "The government wants us to believe she just walked away," whispered Marco Reyes, Elena's research assistant. But Elena was on the verge of something revolutionary, something that certain powerful interests didn't want revealed. Elena's research had focused on developing drought-resistant corn. The varieties available for small-scale farmers in drought-stricken regions. At least, that's what the official records indicated. In reality, what she discovered went far beyond agricultural innovation. The flash drive recovered from her desk contained encrypted files that remained unopened for years, until last winter, when a hacker collective claimed to have broken the encryption. What they found inside sent shockwaves through underground scientific communities across the globe. The documents detailed Project X, a clandestine research initiative funded through a labyrinth of shell companies, all connecting back to a consortium of agricultural conglomerates. The project's true aim: to develop a genetically modified organism with unprecedented properties. Elena's notes described a corn variant engineered to produce a unique enzyme complex during decomposition. This enzyme, when released into soil, could break down complex environmental toxins into harmless compounds, essentially creating self-cleaning farmland. The process was called catalytic filtering, nature's own detoxification system, amplified through targeted genetic modification. The implications were staggering. Lands poisoned by decades of pesticide use could potentially be restored within a single growing season. But buried deeper in the files lay troubling revelations. Project X wasn't just about environmental remediation. The Central American Development Council has approved expansion of Project X test sites to include regions near the northern border, read one memo dated 3 months before Elena's disappearance. Local political resistance has been neutralised through appropriate channels. The Development Council, a body dominated by corporate interests, had apparently been granting exceptional permissions for Project X test sites while bypassing normal environmental review processes. Small farming communities reported being pressured to sell their lands or face economic ruin. Indigenous farmers who refused found their water supplies mysteriously contaminated, or their traditional seed stocks failing. When they planted the improved seeds offered as replacements, their lands became exclusively dependent on the consortium's proprietary fertilisers. But the most shocking connection was yet to be discovered. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, an Amish farmer named Ikizio Yoder began noticing strange phenomena on his land in 2010. His crops grew to unusual sizes. Soil tests showed inexplicable readings, and neighbouring farms reported failing harvests. The earth speaks to those who listen, Ezekiel told a local reporter before refusing further interviews. Something unnatural walks these fields now. What investigators eventually discovered left them baffled. Soil samples from Yoder's farm contained the same enzymatic compounds described in Elena's Project X files, compounds that couldn't have occurred naturally. How had experimental GMO technology from a classified Central American research project found its way to an Amish farm in Pennsylvania? The answer came from an unexpected source. In 2015, a contractor who'd worked on Project X's secure communications infrastructure came forward with astonishing claims. The Amish weren't victims, they were partners. Certain old order Amish communities provided the perfect test environment, the whistleblower revealed. Isolated, self-sufficient populations with minimal outside contact, meticulous farming records going back generations, and, most importantly, no smartphones or internet to document unexplained phenomena. According to the whistleblower, selected Amish communities had been approached by representatives claiming to work for agricultural non-profits. They offered heritage seeds, supposedly preserved from pre-industrial farming eras, seeds that aligned with the Amish commitment to traditional methods. In reality, these were Project X prototypes, engineered to gradually transform soil composition over multiple growing seasons while evading conventional detection methods. As investigators pieced together the fragmented evidence, a disturbing picture emerged. Project X wasn't simply about creating self-remediating crops, it was about controlling who could farm and where. The enzyme complex had a secondary function. While breaking down existing toxins, it created dependency. Any seed not specifically engineered to thrive in the enzyme-altered soil would gradually fail. Within 5 years of implementation, only consortium-approved seeds would grow in treated areas. It was agricultural colonisation, a bloodless way to control the global food supply by transforming the very earth itself. Elena Vargas had discovered this hidden purpose. Her final encrypted note suggested she was planning to expose the truth when she vanished. By 2020, Project X had been officially shuttered, its facilities repurposed for conventional agricultural research. The consortium announced a new line of premium seeds marked as Harmony varieties that work with nature's own systems. These seeds commanded premium prices and came with strict licensing agreements. Farmers across Central America who adopted them reported exceptional yields, followed by dependency. Nothing else would grow in their soils anymore. Meanwhile, in Pennsylvania, Ezekiel Yoder's farm stood abandoned, quarantined by environmental authorities, citing unidentified biological contamination. Satellite imagery showed an unusual pattern in vegetation developing across the region, expanding outward from his former property in a perfect circle. Last month, a package arrived at several news organisations simultaneously. Inside there was a thumb drive and a handwritten note. The note read simply, "The truth about Project X, from Elena." The files contained recent video footage of Elena Vargas, very much alive, working in a remote laboratory. She spoke directly to the camera.
What the consortium doesn't know is that I built a failsafe into Project X. The catalytic filtering process appears to create dependency, but it actually follows a predetermined life cycle. After exactly 15 years, the engineered enzymes trigger a secondary transformation, one that renders the soil completely resistant to genetically modified organisms while supercharging heritage seed varieties.
She held up a small vial of seeds.
Project X was never about control, it was about liberation. I infiltrated their program to subvert it from within. The consortium thought they were creating dependency. Instead, they funded and distributed the antidote to their own monopoly.
The timestamp on the video showed it was recorded just 1 week earlier. As a final revelation, Elena explained why she had approached the Amish.
I needed partners who understood patient stewardship of the land, people who thought in generations, not quarterly profits, people whose commitment to tradition would protect them from corporate coercion.
She smiled at the camera.
The consortium thought the Amish were perfect test subjects because they wouldn't detect the technology. In reality, they were perfect partners because they understood something deeper than technology. They understood covenant with the land.
The video ended with Elena planting seeds in rich, dark soil as the sun set behind her.
The first phase completes this harvest season. Watch what grows next.
Reports of consortium-controlled fields suddenly sprouting wild, unidentified plant species have begun emerging across Central America. Agriculture authorities are baffled. Farmers are celebrating. Project X had indeed changed agriculture forever, just not in the way its corporate backers had intended. Yay, we got through it. You're muted, darling.
Hello.
Hi. So, good evening and welcome all to the rabbit hole tonight. And yeah, well, some of you in the chat were saying this sounds a bit suspicious or even just like a load of crap. And well, it was a work of fiction, and I think we quite clearly say that that it starts off with a work of fiction. But anyway,
It's also one of those ones that seems to exist only on Reddit.
yeah, it is. Well, I think what's happened there is they have taken bits from the real world. Pardon me, because Monsanto does this sort of thing. It makes GMO seeds, and it lets farmers buy them, but it doesn't let them. The seeds won't replicate, so they have to keep buying new seeds from Monsanto every year. So it's just a question that I think putting all that into one thing and then making up a story, and it's not a bad story. But
No,
yeah, it's a load of rubbish. It never happened.
Well, when you suggested it, I went off and I did my research, and there's literally nothing that. I mean, you can find things about GMOs, and you can find things about the Amish, and you can find things about catalysts and stuff like that. But
yeah, it's nonsense. But having said that, Ed, by the time we've been through most of our rabbit holes, most of them turn out to be nonsense.
Well, according to mainstream media, yeah. But I mean, there's a lot more available research on pretty much all of our other rabbit holes.
Yeah. I mean, this one. It was a laugh. It was a laugh doing the video. I mean, I enjoy doing these little stories for you. I hope you enjoy listening to them. If you don't, fair point. Why are you here? But apart from that, welcome to the chat room. We have Shalini, Real Review UK, and aka Ben, Red Eye and Julie, aka Adam, Beats and Tapes, Ray. Who else we got? Nick Toridas, as always. Good to see you, sir. And McNell's TV dropped in early as well. We've got quite a few tonight. Anyway, who have I missed? I'll always miss someone. So if you've been missed and you need a shout out, Paul Armstrong, he's there. Good evening, sir. Right, so let's crack on. Do we want to do any more about this, or are we quite happy that it is a load of rubbish?
I can't. There's nothing that I was able to find that was it. That there's nothing to confirm or deny any of it. It just didn't exist outside of Reddit.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of Redditors that kind of got very exercised about it. But it's also, I mean, Reddit is not normally the place you go for reliable conspiracy stuff.
No. Well, is there a place you go for reliable conspiracy stuff, to be fair?
Here?
Oh, well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah, okay. Right, okay. Yeah, it was fun. It was a bit of fun. It was a fictional story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I'm sorry. You don't need to see Reddit, Ray. It's what would you describe it as? Ed, a cesspool?
Cesspool.
The detritus of humanity.
They're very quick. They're very quick to censor. And yeah, it's just lots of people getting exercised about things, and I mean, talk about echo chambers. I mean, they say Twitter's an echo chamber, which it is to a certain extent, but nothing like Reddit.
Yeah, I think I think Reddit's like everybody's got an opinion, and it's nearly always wrong.
Yeah, but mostly they're convinced that they're the ones that have found the answers to everything.
Yeah, the life, the universe, and everything, which is obviously, as you all know and appreciate, is the answer 42. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to the Adjulé. Adjulé?
Yeah. You just pull me notes up.
How's that?
The Adjulé,
Adjulé.
also known as Kelb el Khelah, desert dog or bush dog. It's a cryptid reported in Mauritania, which is in sort of northwest Africa, and is a very large, very
Kind of
desert country.
below Morocco? Yeah?
Yeah, that sort of area, near Chad and places like that. So yeah, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, it's below those guys. And the Adjulé is primarily in the remote desert regions like the Adrar Plateau and parts of the Western Sahara. It's a fascinating subject in cryptozoology, blending local folklore, sparse sightings, and speculation about its biological reality. So, give you a quick description. The Adjulé is described as a canine-like creature, roughly the size of a large dog. Witnesses report a lean build, short fur suited to desert conditions, and features resembling a wolf, hyena, or African wild dog. Its coloration is typically said to be sandy, grey, or mottled to blend with the desert. It's said to be nocturnal, elusive, and pack-orientated, hunting small game or scavenging in small groups. Locals claim it avoids humans retreating from settlements or campsites, which adds to its mystique. Some accounts mention eerie howls or barks, distinct from known regional animals, which are heard at night in remote areas sometimes. Now, bearing in mind, this is easily one of the most remote and inhospitable parts of the earth, the desert, and it's not the sort of place one can survive in very easily.
There's a couple of things that I would ask questions about. If it looks like a wild dog or a wolf, fair enough, but hyenas don't look like wild dogs or wolves. They're completely different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, a hyena is all front end and muscular at the front with the sloping back and the lower back legs. Dogs are more kind of horizontal. The African wild dog's a lot slimmer and mobile than a hyena.
But
what you're
if
describing
you look at,
sounds like an African wild dog pack, doesn't it?
Well, I mean that's the conventional explanation for it.
Jackals, says Nectaridus. Jackals.
The thing is that it's also possible that it's part of Mauritanian nomadic legend, because I mean that area of the world, it's pretty much nomads that live there, the Tuareg mainly, and among Mauritania's nomadic tribes and Moorish communities, the Adjulé appears in oral traditions as a mysterious desert dweller. It's sometimes framed as a natural animal, other times a spiritual entity or harbinger tied to the harsh Sahara environment. Stories predate modern cryptozoology, suggesting a deep cultural root. The earliest documented references come from colonial-era explorers in the 19th and early 20th centuries, who recorded local tales of strange canines. French ethnographers in Mauritania noted these stories, but often dismissed them as superstition. The Adjulé gained cryptozoological attention in the 1990s when researchers like Carl Schucker highlighted it in books like Mysterious Creatures. Schucker cited 1992 reports from European travelers and a supposed 1997 sighting by a Mauritian guide, though these lack corroboration. So, yeah, it's not just, is it some sort of dog or wild dog?
Well,
does it even exist?
A couple of things. Tuareg, aren't they? Some of our younger viewers might know them as sand people.
No, they're desert nomads like the Bedouin.
Yeah, the sand people from Tatooine. That's a Tuareg, right?
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I was just going to say that Tatooine, as seen in Star Wars, was actually filmed in Tunisia, so we're not talking about.
That's why I'm saying. Anyway, but apart from that, Aren't we a bit far north for African wild dogs? Aren't they savannah based?
Yes, I mean that's the other reason why the Adjulé is interesting, because it's significantly further north than where you would find a lot of these types of animals, because simply put, there isn't a huge amount of life in the desert. I mean, okay, little like desert chipmunks and
You're just
lizards
making
and
that shit
stuff
up
like
now.
that. No, there's these little mammals, because you get. But the thing is that desert animals tend to be small,
Yeah, okay.
because of a lack of food. So the particular area that the Adjulé is seen in is not really hospitable to that sort of sized animal. They're just
And how are you going to sustain a breeding population of a pack of dogs, if there's very little in the way of prey going about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's also no evidence. There's been no skeletal remains, no carcasses, no sightings, certainly no pictures. But at the same time, some people swear that they've heard weird howling noises in the desert, which, I mean, the thing is that the Sahara is absolutely enormous. So to say that there categorically isn't some sort of cryptid that lives there somehow that we haven't spotted is entirely possible. I mean, there could well be multiple different species of animal, but yeah. So, I mean, if we talk about some of the sightings in the early 20th century, there were scattered accounts from French colonial officials and traders describing hyena-like dogs in the Adjulé region, distinct from known jackals or fennec foxes. These were often secondhand relayed by local guides. In the 1990s, there was a 1992 expedition by cryptozoologist Yves Bernard, allegedly collected eyewitness testimonies from nomads near El Ayoun, Western Sahara. And Western Sahara it's actually a country. It describes the west of the Sahara, but they're also describing a country that's being disputed and colonized and decolonized and everything else. They described a pack of Adjulé hunting at dusk. A 1997 sighting reported by Shuker involved a guide claiming to see 3 Adjulé near a wadi, which is a dried up riverbed, but no photographs or physical evidence emerged. Post-2000 sightings have dwindled, possibly due to increased desertification, which is not actually true because the Sahara has been greening.
Greening, yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know where it gets. I didn't write the notes.
My little friend, I did.
Yeah, and I missed that bit when I was reading them through.
Supposed to be checking these things. We're
Well,
trying
the
to
thing
maintain
is
our
that
credible image.
And no verified reports have surfaced in the last 2 decades based on available data, which is interesting because I'm sure that even Tuareg nomads now most likely have mobile phones, even though they can't always use them. I'm sure
The Amish
those
don't.
sorts of. But no, but the Amish don't even have. They still drive around in horse-drawn buggies and stuff.
Yeah, well, they don't believe in electricity. Well, they believe in electricity, they just don't use it, do they?
And they seem to be healthier and happier than the rest of the human population, mostly.
There's something to be said for the Amish. and actually, just on the other side, there are something like 2,000 Amish right now in North Carolina rebuilding people's houses. They weren't asked to go there. They weren't paid to go there. They are there rebuilding people's houses that were wiped out in floods and storms and whatever. And
well, I saw a story today of a sawmill that was destroyed. I don't know whether it was a flood or a tornado or whatever. But the Amish community had it rebuilt in 8 days. What they're doing, and some of the stories coming out of Western North Carolina after the massive floods. There's the Amish. You got to take your hat off to them because they just kind of step in and they properly graft.
Yeah, you have. You've got to do. There's something about people like that it's almost like they have unconditional love for their fellow human being, even though their fellow human being is an arse.
Mm.
Yeah.
And they want to, and even though they fundamentally disagree with large parts of modern society, and they shun technology,
Mhm.
and well, they don't shun technology because they'll use things like chainsaws and pumps, and they use things that are useful to them, but they're also very careful to maintain their traditions, and they stay away from mobile phones. So there's probably much lower rates of depression and stuff amongst the Amish.
Yeah.
And they have
yeah.
strict religious rules, so I can't imagine it's necessarily a particularly easy life, but it certainly seems to be a bit more spiritually fulfilling.
Every time someone says Amish, though, I just think of what's his name's song? Oh, the who's the guy? Oh, Ben. Who's the guy that sings the songs that mocks everything? Oh, good grief! What was the song called? Anyway, Ben will come up with it. Yeah, the Amish don't get anything because they don't they live naturally and they are pretty healthy, Shalini. No, not Sacha Baron Cohen doesn't sing songs. Weird Al Yankovic. That's it. Weird Al Yankovic and his Amish song. Have you never heard that?
No, I know who Weird Al Yankovic is.
Oh, you've got to listen to that song. It's incredible. Right.
So possible explanations for the Adjulé, ranging from cultural to biological. It could be misidentified known species, as we've discussed. Like there's the African wild dog, the striped hyena, jackals or feral dogs, or some desert adapted canine. So some sort of new species of desert jackal. You've got Arctic foxes. So if a fox can live in the Arctic, then chances are a fox can probably live in the Sahara Desert as well. And perhaps it's either been misidentified or it has special adaptations that make it look slightly different, or I don't know, could be anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, undiscovered species. We've got a surviving prehistoric canid, like a descendant of Canis simensis, which is the Ethiopian wolf, or a unique Sahara-adapted species. The lack of fossils or DNA evidence makes this unlikely, but not impossible, given the Sahara's unexplored corners. The desert's vastness and low human density could hide a small population, though sustaining a breeding group would be challenging. Next, we have
I just said that.
Yeah. Next, we have folklore and cultural memory. So the Adjulé might be a mythologized version of real animals amplified by storytelling. Desert nomads reliant on oral history might have woven rare sightings into tales of supernatural creatures. Similar cryptids like the Chuti in Mali or Anubis-like dogs in ancient Egyptian lore suggest a regional tradition of mysterious canines. Next, we have environmental factors. Mirage-like distortions in desert heat or misinterpretations of tracks could fuel sightings. The Sahara's extreme conditions make reliable observation difficult, obviously. Declining biodiversity in Mauritania due to desertification might explain why sightings have tapered off if the Adjulé was ever real. Now, there are parts of it where the desert is encroaching, and there's parts of it probably further south where it's greening. So in theory, these animals could have migrated, or maybe they were migratory anyway. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the main challenges in verification are a lack of evidence. There's literally been nothing: no bones, no fur, no poo, no photographs. The tracks, they have found some tracks, but they're inconclusive and could easily have belonged to jackals or dogs or something along those lines.
Yeah.
the other issue is the remote habitat. Mauritania's deserts are sparsely populated with limited access for researchers. Political instability and logistical challenges hinder explorations. I mean, there's obviously water scarcity, extreme heat, the lack of, I mean, it would be difficult to take 4x4s through a lot of that sand and things like that. So, I mean, there could be all sorts of things out in the desert that we don't know about. Mainstream zoologists dismiss the Adjulé as folklore or misidentification, given the absence of physical proof. And cryptozoology's fringe status doesn't help its case, which that's typical of mainstream science. So,
but in this case, it's accurate.
Well, the thing is that it does appear in a lot of Mauritania's oral stories. So maybe it's a kind of boogeyman. Maybe Mauritanian kids are told, eat your dinner, or the Adjulé is going to come and eat you in the night or something.
Like Wee Willie Winkie.
Yeah, I guess so.
just calling it, mate. Just calling it, you know.
But it's, I mean, the thing is that without any kind of clear evidence, especially in this day of ubiquitous camera phones, and although camera phones probably not quite so ubiquitous in the Mauritanian desert, but you would think that someone would have found something. And there have been cryptozoologists who have actually gone into the desert to try and find this thing and have never found it or any trace of it. I mean, even scat, the poo, is something that they can use to identify new species and things like that, and none of that has been found either. So if this thing does exist, then chances are it's in very small numbers, and maybe they live in caves in the desert or something. I don't know.
What's your gut telling you here, Ed? Come on. What's your gut telling you?
My gut is telling me that it's probably just folklore, and maybe it did exist hundreds of years ago, and the stories about it have been passed down through the generations.
That you're
siren outside.
Oh, yeah, here they come.
Yeah,
here they come.
Well, we're not even covering anything controversial this evening. I haven't even used the F word.
They've stopped outside. Pull the plug, Ed. Burn the drives. Go.
I haven't got anything on my drives apart from loads of memes. Although that in this day and age, that would be enough to land you in the slammer.
God, you've gone down for decades, man. Decades.
Oh dear. Well, because I'm kind of in the centre of town, so hearing sirens screaming past is not out of the ordinary.
They don't normally stop right outside your door, though.
No, that's true. But then there's enough.
That's true.
There's enough dodgy people that live in this particular area. So that was the Adjulé. That's all I've got on that one. And yeah, I think misidentified species stories handed down. But I'm not seeing any actual physical evidence that this thing is real. So it's kind of desert Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
In fact, there's theoretically, because there've been a few grainy images of Nessie. So, I mean, there aren't even grainy images of the Adjulé. So
we're not doing well tonight. Okay. Shall we move on to the Black Hands case?
Yeah, go on.
Oh, good God. Here we go. The Black Hands case on May the 19th, 1950, in a small French town near the Loire River. An unnamed woman, allegedly experienced one of the most unusual and perplexing encounters in UFO history. I'm not quite sure you can use UFO and history in the same sentence. But anyway, known as the Black Hands case, this incident has fascinated researchers for decades due to its unique characteristics that set it apart from typical alien abduction narratives. This report examines the account in detail and critically assesses what evidence, if any, exists beyond the experiencer's claims. Right, according to the account, the incident began on May the 19th at approximately 4 p.m. Now, this is France. 4 p.m, everybody's still drunk. You must remember that. After a 2-hour lunch that runs from 12 till 2. When a woman walking near the River Loire in Cour de la Bar, France, La France, observed a strange aerial phenomenon. She witnessed a bright light moving across the sky that suddenly stopped, hovered briefly, then rose, then stopped again, flashed, and disappeared at high speed. The woman dismissed the experience and continued with her life. As you would. The following afternoon, while walking in the same area, she encountered a similar light. Unlike the previous day, the light approached her directly until it nearly enveloped her. What happened next? This is weird though. This is the weird one because you don't normally get this in abduction stories. So what happened next differentiates this case from typical UFO encounters. It does. 2 black gloved hands with a yellowish tint around them emerged from the light and reached towards her. So for reasons she couldn't explain, the woman felt compelled to walk towards the light. The disembodied hands suddenly seized her head violently, squeezing and shaking her entire body in a jerking motion. At one point, her head was pulled forward and struck what she described as an invisible torso that felt metallic rather than organic. So, the woman reported a sensation of increasingly cold air around her, fingers covering her eyes, nostrils, and mouth, causing difficulty breathing, a lightning-like sensation coursing through her body, being swung back and forth as if carried by the invisible hands, hearing a strange muffled laugh from a distance, being struck in her back by what felt like an invisible knee, a pressurized force pushing her to the ground. Perhaps most intriguingly, she claimed to hear a voice, clearly speaking in French, saying, "There she is, we got her," followed by another voice too muffled and distant to comprehend. After being dragged along the ground for some time, she suddenly found herself alone in a field. The physical evidence beyond the woman's testimony, we have cuts and scratches on her arms and legs, a burning sensation on her back, aching muscles throughout her body, and a bitter metallic taste in her mouth. As she attempted to leave the area, she reported seeing a blinding white flash and had the impression that something had taken off from nearby. Just an impression, mind you. Frightened and confused, she returned home and later reported the incident to the local police. According to the account, the authorities searched the field. Strange scorch marks were discovered on the ground, and several trees showed evidence of considerable damage. However, despite these findings, no satisfactory explanation was offered, and the case remains officially unresolved. Right. Okay. So let's. What have we got? We've got one witness testimony. That's it. Entire incident recounted by one person who is the experiencer herself. Limited documentation. While the search by police is mentioned, no references to official reports. No official reports on police in that area. No photographs. No formal investigation recorded. Case information comes from a documentary about alien abductions. Well, there we go. Physical evidence, the scorch marks and tree damage, while potentially significant, lack detailed documentation or alternative explanations, such as lightning strikes or whatever, or even human activity. And the time period. The case occurred in 1950 when, let's be honest, documentation wasn't quite as rigorous as it is in today's policing and even UFO recording. areas. So, what do people think? Well, there's always, as always, it was extraterrestrials. It could represent an attempted alien abduction. Nah. And these guys are speaking French and laughing at her. You know what? I mean, I'll come to what I think in a minute, but secret human technology in 1950. It's a good one. It sounds a bit like some kind of time tunnel thing, doesn't it? Interdimensional interaction, a dimensional portal, beings from another reality to reach through momentarily. But why then would they say we got her? Were they looking for her in particular? Why would they? You know, why did
and why would they just shake her head around?
I don't. Right,
and then just leave her if they if they said they got her. Why would they?
Yeah, exactly. Psychological factors. We must consider state of mind, inebriation, or drugs, or hallucinations. You know, I don't know. Fascinating, but evidentially limited account, which kind of sums up an awful lot of the UFO lore and community. You know, fascinating story, great, trust me, bro, but doesn't really come across with the goods. Now, when you put together the things that happened to her, it almost sounds like an attempted sexual assault, doesn't it?
I'm leaning towards some sort of assault that she perhaps, because I mean it's also the 1950s, so these things would potentially have carried a lot more stigma. Mm-hmm. And so to say that it was aliens was perhaps easier for her. Maybe she was so traumatized by the experience that her brain kind of concocted the story as a self-defense mechanism of some type. I mean, she could have just been really pissed and walked into a tree a few times or something. I don't know. So it's possible that she was trying to avoid embarrassment because she'd done something a bit stupid after a few too many glasses of wine, as is entirely possible. I mean, it could also be tying in because it was the late 1940s and early 1950s that we had a rash of UFO sightings, particularly in America. So
yeah, especially just after Roswell.
Yeah, so it was kind of part of the zeitgeist as well, because I'm sure those sort of stories would have been in the French newspapers and on French radio and stuff at the time. It's certainly one of the more unusual alien encounters. They don't normally have metallic hands and speak French and shake you around and drag you about and then just vanish.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards a more human explanation, and as you say, she's kind of dressing it up in an attempt to save face. You know, or even just convince herself that it never happened, because people do that kind of thing. You know, they try and
Sure.
yeah, you know, disregard that, move on with their
Absolutely.
life.
I mean, we'll deal with trauma in different ways, and it could have just been so traumatic that I don't know. It's the kind of story that you think maybe she was trying to avoid embarrassment in some way, or maybe she was. I don't know what she'd been drinking, whether it was wine or absinthe. I mean, if she'd been drinking lots of absinthe, then that can make you hallucinate and see and do strange things, as well as potentially fall over quite a lot.
I get the impression you speak from experience.
Absinthe, yeah. I've only got hammered on absinthe twice, and in both cases, it ended up being a very unusual evening.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not even going to go into more details.
So they're talking about Communion in the chat, which was a movie, based on Whitley Strieber's book, in which he what would you call, documents his own abduction experiences. And I've done a lot. I mean, I've done a lot of digging into UFOs in the years since I was. I mean, I think, when did I really get into UFOs? 14, 15. So I've been digging into them for a long time. And I've done a lot more digging recently because I started the Cult of UFO, which I think I'm going to start posting stuff back on that. But yeah, so I looked into alien abductions, and I'm just not convinced at all. Because
yeah, we've talked that one through.
Yeah,
before.
and did I tell you I had an experience recently?
No.
Right. So I didn't have an abduction, but what I did have was I had an experience of sleep paralysis. Have you had that?
Yes.
It's horrible. Yeah, I haven't had it for years, but I came. What I thought was that I woke up because there was something beside me growling at me furiously, right? And trying to attack me. But I couldn't move. And it was, like, and I'm like, and I couldn't move and I couldn't see it. And I'm trying to move my head over to see it. And I'm trying to swing my arm over to punch it. And I could not move. And then I woke up properly, letting out an almighty yell, right? Because I was trying to fight this thing. And there's nothing there, of course. And I'm just lying in bed. There's nothing there at all. There never has been. Because what I think happened was I heard myself snoring. And my brain joined up the pieces and made this story up. But it was scary as shit. And at the time, it felt so real. You know? And I think
sleep paralysis is terrifying.
Oh yeah, I mean it's horrible because one, you don't realize a lot of times you don't realize you're still sleeping, and you think you are genuinely paralyzed, and you have all these things going on around you that aren't really there. It's just your brain filling in gaps. What happens, Shalini? Well, you know how when you go to sleep, your body stops you from moving so you don't injure yourself in dreams. Well, what happens is you get into this kind of state where you're not quite awake, but you're not quite fully asleep. So you're starting to bring in stuff through your senses, like through your eyes and your ears. And even a small sound outside can be blown out of all proportion because your brain's just filling in all these weird bits. And you end up thinking that either somebody's sitting on your chest trying to choke you, or in a lot of cases, there are short, grey people standing next to you. And then, because you can't move, you imagine all sorts of weird things getting done to you, allegedly. I've never had that experience, but yeah, the probing. But yeah, so yeah, it's not nice, sleep paralysis. And I think it explains a lot. I think it explains a lot of what's going on because, I mean, I did that Lindo Napolitano one, the New York abduction where allegedly she got taken from her bedroom out the window of her 12th floor apartment into a hovering spacecraft, probed and then put back. And it's just not believable. It's just not believable. And then what happens is you get people like Bud Hopkins in this case, who comes along and does hypnotic regression and puts ideas in their head and reinforces it. In my view, hypnotic regression is not, in my view, is not credible. It's just not credible at all. There's too much leading of the witness. It's just,
I agree.
And John Mack people love John Mack, and I get flack for criticising him. He does exactly the same thing. He turned up at the aerial school. Remember, we did the aerial school as well. He turned up at the aerial school, and but he turned up like 6 weeks after the thing had happened, and nobody had mentioned, the telepathy or anything like that. None of the kids had mentioned the telepathy until John Mack turned up and put the idea in their head. And then they started talking about it, and I think these people they're not proper investigators, and that's the problem. They think they're helping people, they think they're therapists, and then they decide they're investigating because they're going to write a book about it. And they're not helping anyone, they're not investigating anything, and really all they're doing is muddying the waters, in my view. That's just my view.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for that. Certainly, if you watch some of these,
sorry. DW, it's just DW says the worst cases are where you see a toilet. Do not use them.
Oh yeah, that happened to me once when I was a kid.
Oh,
bad idea.
Hey, I can tell you a story. Right, it's a night before graduation. We're in the dorm at the police college. We've all been gutted, right? So we're all wrecked. I'm lying in my bed. I'm sleeping, and I hear what sounds like running water. Right, it's about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I wakes up, and there's my dorm was back to the wall, and the dorms were open, so there was just a barrier, just a partition between the dorms, 12 in the room or whatever, and 6 on each side, and the beds were wall to, and the other bed was in the window, so there were windows on down one side. So I'm in the side without the window, and I wakes up and I looks up, and there's a guy, or what appears to be a guy, standing at the wardrobe, right? And I'm thinking, nah. I just rolled over and went back to sleep. Okay. So I gets up in the morning, starts putting all my kit on, and I'm fine. I'm getting all my stuff on, all our nicely build boots and shoes and ironed shirts and everything. And the guy opposite me is starting to put his stuff on. And he's going, my boots are wet. Right? Why are my boots wet? It's because it's been dry, And he says, the polish is fucking gone on my boots. And then he opens his drawer, and his warrant card's swimming in liquid. One of the guys had got up, walked to where he thought the toilet was, and pushed in the guy's wardrobe.
Oh.
He just done it on autopilot.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah. Yeah, my brother did it as well. He was tiny, though. I remember I was watching telly with my mum and dad, and it was getting late, and my brothers had been in bed. They were a couple of years younger than me, so they went to bed earlier. And it was about 10 o'clock or something, and they come down the stairs, walked over to the mantelpiece, and starts peeing into the fire. And we're all sitting there looking at each other, and he just pees into the fire, turns around, and walks back up the stairs. Well, he was still he did it totally sleepwalking. It was really bizarre. My mum was not best pleased.
No, I bet your mother was not. No, not at all.
Oh, so anyway, right. Yeah, I think Linda, not Linda, I think this young lady from France that is unnamed is trying to explain something that didn't really happen the way that she said it did.
I think so too. I think there was something, maybe she blacked out, or maybe she had, I don't know. I'm sort of leaning in the direction of excessive alcohol consumption.
Or even through no fault of her own, some kind of attack,
Well, I think, to be honest, the whole sexual assault thing, given that, I mean, obviously sexual assault is not, is something that happens in this day and age, but at the same time, I'm not sure it necessarily carries the same depth of social stigma that it did back in the 1950s. And so even if it was an attempted assault or something, and you could understand that her describing the sensation of having her head grabbed and being dragged around. I mean, that to me has a distinctly terrestrial feel to it.
Right. Okay. We'll get to your question in a minute, Britt, mate. I will ask you that. We've got a chatter in the vertical. I'm going to say hi to because that's a new face and name, Rosa. In my sleep paralysis, I get shadow people. I always hear a weird sound at the same time. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. And I think that accounts for a lot of the grey stuff and it's scary as hell. So, and moving on from that, Brittany asks, scariest experience, John, Ed?
Well, one of mine, and also sleep paralysis, was when I was about 3 years old, and I had malaria as a kid. And I have a very clear memory of lying in my parents' bed. My mum was in hospital at the time having my brother. And I couldn't move, and I had baby crocodiles eating my trying to bite my toes. And I swear to God, I swear to God, there were baby crocodiles in my bed. Wow. But also one of the nightmares I used to get as a kid would be where you're outside and it's nighttime and it's pitch black, and you have this sense of something coming towards you, and you want to run away and you can't run.
Yeah.
Or you're really angry with someone and you're trying to punch them and you cannot make as much energy as you put into the punch. You can never make it connect.
It's like it gets pulled at the last second,
and it's so frustrating, and it just makes you angrier. And you put all of your force into it, and it's nothing when it hits. And it's in terms of real life scary experiences, probably nearly getting run over by a hippo. But I think I've told people that story before.
Yeah. You wouldn't feel so bad now because you could kind of face up to it now because you get pretty much some weight behind you yourself.
You don't face up to a hippo. And I'm not that large, thank you very much, cheeky bastard. Yes, I could do with losing a few pounds, but not like 250 pounds, dickhead.
Rosa just posted a story and then retracted it. Her husband's obviously told her to retract it, but it was to do with him waking up and going to the toilet somewhere that he shouldn't have. But anyway, we'll move on to that. My scariest experience, I'm not quite sure. I've had quite a few.
Well, you worked in the police.
New donation from Nick Taradis.
Good one, Nick Taradis. Thank you for your donation, sir. Namaste, as they say. Right, so dream-wise, I had this recurring dream, and I must have been about 13 or something. And it was before the movie Alien came out, right? Because Alien came out in 1979. And it was before that, well before that movie, because I was just turned a teenager, I think. And I used to have this recurring dream in which I was walking through this huge spaceship. Very like, do you know Alien, the first movie, when they first discover the space jockey, the space pilot? The huge space pilot sitting in the chair, they walk through that huge room. It was exactly like that. And I used to have this dream every freaking night for like 2 weeks, right? And I also had this incredible pain in my chest, right down the center. And eventually my mum took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, yeah, it's just growing pains, just your chest expanded. And I'm like, what about the dreams though? Maybe I was abducted.
That's your brain growing.
Maybe I was abducted.
Dreams are fascinating because it's a way of processing things, and I think there's a certain amount to be said for dreams being an expression of fears and anxieties and
Yeah,
things like that. But it's crazy how the human brain works.
yeah. Oh no, it's absolutely crazy. I'm trying to think any real world really terrifying experiences. I'm not sure. There's just so many.
Well, that's the thing about having been a policeman.
Yeah,
It's kind of part of the job in a way.
it
And
kind
he
of
lived
is.
in France as well. That must have been pretty scary.
France was brilliant. It was like living in 1980s Britain. It's like going back 30, 40 years, easy.
Mm.
You know, when you go and live in France. As I said, they still use checks and things like that. You know, nobody, you never see anyone writing a check here. Everybody writes a check for their supermarket groceries. Nobody, there were no self-service tills. None. Everybody, and people will queue. They talk about the English are good at queuing, but the French are just queue. You know, and they seem to treat a queue as an excuse to talk to each other. So it's just, yeah. Going to the supermarket takes twice as long as it does in the UK.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the whole queuing thing, and yeah, no.
Yeah, I can't really think of it. I'll try and think of something, brought me about. So DW has a recurring dream. What recurring dream do you have, DW? And Rosa got a new hairdryer out of her experience with her husband. That's good. Good to hear that. Beats and tapes is I only queue on record store day. Should have called yourself Beats and Vinyl or something, not Beats and Tapes. Right. So I think that kind of
We've done that one.
I think that kind of winds that one up. I think that's
Yeah,
that's us done an hour, so we've done not bad.
And let it not be said that we don't approach rabbit holes with a critical eye and not just buy into whatever we're being told or reading or whatever.
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, generally we're fairly skeptical when it comes to rabbit holes these days because there's just so many that turn out to be damp squib, don't they?
And there are some. I mean, the big ones, JFK, 9/11. My views about those haven't changed. I mean, some of my views, like the moon landings, for example, I'm now no longer convinced that we went to the moon, whereas before we did that show, I was.
Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, of the three that we covered this evening, I think the one that's the most likely to potentially either exist or have existed is the Adjulé.
Probably. I think it's probably been some kind of offshoot of the African hunting dog or something like that used to exist in former times, and it's gradually just moved out into nothing. Yeah, I know, right. So Brits and Tape says the movie reviews, and sorry, Ed. The Brits and Tape says the movie review was good, and he says Transformers 1 sounds absolute shite. Yeah, it does, mate. But what can I do? I made the rules, and I said if you'd watched as long as you'd watched two movies, yours would have to be considered. And because there's only three of us at the moment, then John's got to get his say. So, got to do it, mate. Got to do it. But if you haven't watched the Minecraft review, which is you won't be able to because it's unlisted at the moment. But I'm going to be putting up a Snow White review as well because I'm going to move all the reviews onto Snarky Cinema. There's no point in having too many different things on the one channel. So all the reviews are going to move to Snarky Cinema, and the what do you call it? Live streams will go there as well. But Oh, Beats and Tape says the movie review was so good. He never watched the movie. Why, thank you.
Well, I think McDonald's is promoting. They've done a tie-in with the Minecraft movie. So
Snow White's
apart from
Snow White's on production. Of halfway through it. I was editing it earlier today.
yeah, but is Snow White actually going to be Snow White, or is Snow? I mean,
No, I'm talking about the review of Snow White. Yeah.
oh right, the most recent Hispanic version of Snow White.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Worktastic. That one apparently it flopped. So you actually put you put yourself through that garbage piece of shit film.
I do it so you guys don't have to.
That's actually a proper community service.
Yeah. Bratmate says Minecraft was class. You were so pissed at that film. Yeah, I was. I didn't like it. I can't stand Jack Black. If you've not, I mean, as I said, all the reviews are going back up in Snarky Cinema. If you get a chance, have a look at the Borderlands review as well, because Jack Black gets a doing in that as well. I can't stand Jack Black. I don't find him funny.
I don't find him funny either. I just think he's a bit of an idiot somehow.
Yeah.
His whole humor style seems to revolve around him being in
slapstick.
Yeah. Anyway.
So next week, people, we have I don't know if we want to do a poll or if we just want to say what we're going to. Yeah, he kind of is, Brit, mate. Next week we have, I think there's a couple of things that are on the back burner. We have the Flatwoods Monster, which I quite fancy doing. The Squonk, which we'll probably just use as a filler, so that won't be there for that long, but we would stick it in.
With a name like that, it's got to be done.
Oh yeah, I know. The other ones that I think, the Puzzling Case of Robert Wone, that's quite interesting. It's true crime. And I think we're going to have to do Houdini Lovecraft, but Ed, don't worry, people. Ed will not be reading a Lovecraft story.
I'm never reading another Lovecraft story for the rest as long as I live.
And we need to do the Puaki, or the Puakai, Hast's eagle, standing nearly 5 foot tall with a wingspan of 7 feet. We'll need to do that at some point as well. That's a cryptid and a half, isn't it?
Yeah, that's like the New Zealand dodo, but much bigger.
Yeah, that'll eat you instead of you eating that. Britmate wants to that.
That's true.
Right. Why? I don't know if I could do the Cheech and Chong films, mate. I don't know if I could. I didn't even like them when they came out.
Yeah, but you've never been much of a stoner.
I'm not a stoner.
You have to be properly baked to appreciate those films.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. I'm not a stoner. The shadow.
Yeah, no.
Do a rabbit hole on the shadow people. Well, that's kind of like sleep paralysis, isn't it?
Didn't we cover shadow people in a previous show?
I thought we did, but I need to. Well, as the little blurb said when you saw it, established 2022. This show
We've done
started.
a lot of rabbit holes.
Yeah,
and I mean that's why we're now on to strange Mauritanian canid cryptids.
I'm thinking the Flatwoods Monsters.
I like. Yeah, I think the ones that you mentioned, and we have to do the Houdini Lovecraft one because that just sounds fascinating. So
we'll see how they go. We might do 3 again. In which case, we do the Flatwoods Monster, the Squonk, and the Houdini Lovecraft. All in all, a compendium of rabbit holes, a burrow, if you like.
A rabbit warren.
A warren, that's the word I was looking for. That is the word. Yeah, 2022.
And we'll be back tomorrow for All In as well.
Yes, we will.
It's going to be fun. Featuring, did you know, I'll just give people a little bit of a preview of one of the stories we're going to do tomorrow. Did you know that there is a special hammer in the Vatican, and when the Pope dies, they use this hammer and they hit him on the head 3 times with this like ivory gold inlaid hammer to make sure he's dead.
You just know that a pope tried to fake his own death once, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have to, and it's actually, I mean, we'll have a picture of it tomorrow, so you'll have to come back to see it. But it's a nasty looking hammer. It's got one end that's flat and one end that's like spiky. That looks like it would actually probably go through the skull.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No, don't start me with. Don't start me with that nonsense, Brett, mate. I can't be done with it. It's just people being stupid. It really is. Not having a clue. That's what I was saying. Yeah, I was saying this on the review show the other night. People never seen a dead body these days. It's like they don't understand what happens when people die, you know.
Which is a bit strange, seeing as how many dead bodies we see on Twitter coming out of Gaza every day.
Yeah, well, especially the ones that sit up and then have a fag.
Oh no, that was during the Rona. That wasn't during the current things that are going on. But yes, that was one of the famous. That was one of the famous videos during the Rona period.
But that wasn't even about the Rona. That was it was something else, was it not? Oh, anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Right. Yes, we'll be back tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, as always, for All In. And by the way, YouTube censors, when I say FAG, it means a cigarette in the UK. You know, you can't say anything these days, can you? I mean, no, it really is. We really are turning into Demolition Man. You know, that film has turned out to be a documentary.
Yeah, it really has. It really has.
Freaking incredible, mate. Absolutely incredible. Right.
And Orwell was right.
So thank you very much, people, for attending tonight. It's been great for me. It's been great for you, Ed. Has it?
Oh, no, I've had a good time. Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun.
Ed. And it's been great for you.